It's that time of year when Georgia's highways aren't just filling up with drivers, but also deer. Wildlife experts say October through December marks peak season for collisions, and the odds might surprise you. It's estimated that Georgia drivers face roughly a 1 in 83 chance of hitting a deer or other animal this year. AAA says an estimated 50,000 deer-related collisions happen annually on Georgia roads, and most of them during dawn and dusk hours. And nearly half of all deer crashes take place in fall, when deer are most active during breeding season. All right, let's look more into this with Charlie Killmaster, state deer biologist with the Georgia DNR's Wildlife Resource Division. All right, so what is the one thing you wish every driver understood about deer behavior right now?
Paying attention and understanding that they're going to be crossing the roads a lot more during this time of year with breeding season on. So being vigilant and paying attention to the roadsides, particularly at dawn and dusk.
And so I actually just saw my first one along the road, east-west connector in Cobb County, like the Smyrna area. Are we seeing more deer collisions because the population is growing, or you think it's more about how Georgia's development patterns are changing?
Well, there's two factors. The number of cars on the road. As the human population increases in the state, we have more drivers, and more drivers equal more opportunities for those crossings to happen. Our population is relatively stable in most parts of the state, but we do see those seasonal peaks in vehicle collisions this time of year.
It's funny, growing up in Michigan, this was like a huge part of drivers training because the population there just is so huge and much longer throughout the year. So I'm familiar with this term. We hear the warning, don't veer for deer. Why is swerving actually more dangerous than staying the course?
Well, swerving could put you in the path of another vehicle or a inanimate object like a tree or something that could cause more damage to the vehicle or severe injury to the person than hitting the deer itself. It's best to just to brake and not swerve out of the lane and avoid it. If there's no other course of action, just slow down as much as possible before impact. But it's far safer for the human, from a human safety standpoint, to hit the deer than it is to swerve out of the way and potentially run off the road or roll the vehicle over.
Just stay the course. Yeah, so I mentioned seeing influx in deer along east-west connector there in Smyrna. Where are some of the worst places here in Georgia for possible deer collisions to happen?
Well, any of the suburban metro Atlanta area where we have the highest number of drivers, it's also good deer habitat as well. And so we see a lot of road crossings from deer where we have a lot of drivers. So those are certainly the issues. The main areas to be cognizant of is when you don't have a lot of visibility on the roadside. So if there's forested cover coming right up to the edge of the roads, pay particular attention because you can't see a lot of warning when they're coming. And then if you see one deer cross, don't just assume that the damage is gone. Deer often travel in groups, and if you see one deer cross ahead of you, as I did twice this morning on my way into work, that second deer is oftentimes the deer that somebody hits because they think the danger is past. So deer travel in groups, and if you see one, there are very likely others. Continue to slow down at that spot where the deer crossed ahead of you.
So for drivers who travel those wooded or rural routes every day, what is the smartest thing they can do to avoid a collision?
Slow down at dawn and dusk. That gives you a lot more time to react in the event that one crosses the road.
And any other practical tips, maybe even some small habits that really just make a big difference for drivers this time of year?
Paying attention as much as you can to the roadsides and being aware that that's a potential road hazard instead of looking just on the roadway itself for any potential hazards.
And this could be really bad. I mean, I've seen some deer versus car wrecks that were pretty intense. So what kind of injuries or damage are most common in these accidents?
Well, most of it would be vehicular damage, but there are at times in parts of the country fatalities associated with deer vehicle collisions. More often than not, it's a result of people swerving out of the way to avoid the collision and ending up in a more dangerous vehicle accident than would have occurred if they had just hit the deer directly without swerving. So That's the main thing is don't veer for deer and slow down as much as possible if a collision is unavoidable.
Well, how often do you think that drivers actually report these incidents? Do you think the real numbers might actually be even higher than what we know about?
Well, we know the most about the reports from insurance claims, so it would depend on the level of damage, whether or not the damage would be high enough to file for an insurance claim. So there could be a slightly increase. There are various reported numbers. 50 to 60,000 is what we hear from various insurance companies on those number of claims that they file.
What role can communities play in things like, let's say, fencing or lighting or even driver education in lowering the crash risk?
Well, creating increased visibility along roadsides and clearing vegetation that's going to be a lot more conducive to preventing people from seeing deer approaching the road. That increase in visibility certainly helps. There are certain circumstances that fencing might be most appropriate, but it takes about an 8-foot tall fence to prevent access from deer in some circumstances. So our Department of Transportation does a really good job especially on interstates, doing things like clearing out vegetation alongside bigger interstates and putting up fencing where it's appropriate.
All right, lastly, if you could leave viewers with one takeaway for the season, what's your best piece of advice before they head out on the road this weekend?
Let's see. The don't swerve is to avoid a collision is probably the single biggest piece of information and the thing that could cause the most danger or potential for harm. So don't swerve to avoid a collision.
All right, and I'm going to add in, keep your eyes open, because if I'm going head on with the deer, I'm probably going to, if I don't swerve, I'm going to close my eyes. That's probably not good either. That's probably not a good idea to do either. All right, Charlie Killmaster, thank you so much for all of your expertise and being with us here, and have a great weekend.